Iggy Rodriguez from Chicago, contestant on Bachelorette season 13 with Rachel, and I'm live with the Bachelor Universe podcast.
All right, Iggy, glad to have you on the show. This is Jim Alexander with the Bachelor Universe podcast. Wow, you are still in the running. So anyone who's listening right now, you are still in the universe, on the show. I like to start out just telling you, how did you get involved with the show? What was the process like? Just kind of break it down. How did you even get involved from the beginning of it?
So I was actually kind of unexpectedly contacted by their sourcing and talent team through LinkedIn. I think they were basically like, hey, you are a seemingly mediocre to decent-looking human being, and you seem to have some professional attributes to you. Would you be interested in participating in a reality television show based around dating? And at the time, I'm currently still single. No spoiler alert there. But I was single, and I had the fortunate opportunity to run my own business, and I could take the time and said, you know what? I've been organically a fan of the Bachelor, Bachelorette franchise for a while. If I'm going to do it, this is probably the time, and it seems like a really, really cool experience. So I decided to kind of take the plunge, and you go through kind of a myriad of testing processes, phone interviews, Skype interviews, in-person interviews. There is a kind of an in-person interview in Los Angeles as well. So you go through a bunch of different layers of interviewing and really just sort of identifying whether or not you'd be a good fit, and ultimately they tell you whether or not you've been selected for the show. And as you guys can see, I was one of those lucky few that were selected.
Yeah, how was that process of going through these multiple interviews? Because that's usually kind of the standard. You go on the shows and you go through so many levels of these interviews. As you were going along with it, how did you feel your chances were getting good at it? Did you get any feedback? How was that process as you were kind of moving from one step to another?
The process is a bit of a microcosm of your experience on the show, where you don't really know how it's going until it's already gone. You're like, okay, I just did this interview. I have no idea if it went well or poorly. They don't really give you an indication. Very much kind of like hanging out with Rachel. It's like, I think our conversation went well, but there were 30 other people who also had a conversation with her tonight. So I'm just hoping it goes well. And each time you go through each stage, you get a little more confident, a little more comfortable. And I think the rigor is sort of indicative of the type of rigor that you have on the show, because you do interviews all day, and then you really are talking about how you're feeling, and you've got to be able to communicate really effectively, even if the questions are asked a bunch of different times in different ways. So it's a bit of a litmus test for how much you can handle a type of interview process on the show as well.
Mm-hmm. And how long of a process was this from beginning to end, pretty much, until you kind of got the final words, you got casted? How long did all these steps take place, and what kind of span?
They're different for different people, but mine was a span of, I'd say 45, 60 days probably.
Okay, so 2 months. When did you originally get contact? Because we know the show films at a different time that it airs. You probably were doing this, right when Nick's season started, right? So Nick's season ended. That's when you guys started filming. So when was the first time you were even approached for the show?
The first time I was approached, I believe it was LinkedIn, was October or so. And the filming actually started the middle of March.
Well, in advance, few months even before anything got even rolling. So were you even aware when you were going through a casting who might be the Bachelorette or any sort of idea?
I didn't know who it was until it was announced.
So it was, they kind of kept it under wraps with Rachel especially. Did you have a preference? Because you must have been watching kind of Nick's season, getting ready almost, or hearing rumors about who might be on it. Did you have any inkling or idea who you might even be interested in?
You know what's funny is that Nick's season was probably the least watched season over the last few for me personally. which is interesting because I probably should have been more involved, considering that one of those ladies ended up being the Bachelorette. But I sort of wanted it to be organic. As a fan of the show, I didn't want to be that guy that knew Rachel's cousin's dog's name
right.
and every fact about who she is. I wanted it to feel like I was meeting this person and had an idea, obviously, who this person was, but didn't dive into her intimate details because that's not. I mean, some guys do that on a regular date, but for me, I'm not gonna level page 5 Google you if I'm going on a date with you. I want to get to know who you are. So I didn't really do a whole lot of research. Yeah,
it's an organic way. I feel like now with a lot of these contestants from the show, that the Twitter is such a huge way of connecting beforehand. And Nick's done it. That's how he appeared on Caitlin's season. To just kind of reach out early. But it does feel kind of unauthentic in a way, and kind of takes away the mystery and the surprise, I guess, of getting to know someone organically from the start.
Yeah, and that's the approach I wanted to take. Right? I wanted it to be a real relationship, and I wanted it to feel like it is as normal as I could have in that particular environment, which is somewhat difficult.
For some of these contestants, they come to your towns and film the vignettes. Did you get any such a vignette? Did the producers come out to Chicago to film anything with you, or was it mostly just done through phone, Skype, and off-site?
Just through phone, Skype, and offsite. I didn't have anyone. So you'll see, in episode 1, that first rose ceremony, you'll have 4 or 5 guys that have intro package. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how they choose that. I'm not sure, how they come around as to who does that or what, but I was not involved in that particular process.
I had a friend who was on the show a couple years back. He had the package, actually, so they did come to Chicago to film him. But yeah, it's a very kind of random process, and the funny thing is that everyone seems to have a different, there's no set approach, really, to how they seem to, go about casting an individual. So your story is definitely different than others, it seems like.
Everyone's story is very unique. There are qualities about everyone on the show that are somewhat similar, but in that we're all kind of outgoing, and it seems like, especially this year, we all had a little more seemingly kind of career-oriented. We were a little older, mm-hmm. and a lot of our attributes were similar, but it's crazy how distinctly different, the personality types are in the house.
Yeah, what would you kind of be advised? Because I've tried out for the show previously, actually for this season. Funny to think of it, when they had a local Chicago casting call. I went to the in-person casting. I might have been probably one of 1 or 2 guys versus a ratio of 100 women, in the room. It was kind of funny how I went in immediately and did my interview and stuff. But what do you think is the key to kind of get on the show, at least from your perspective? What does it take, you think? I know they reached out to you, so it's a little bit different, but for someone who wants to go out, there's an open call in Chicago, actually, about in a week and a half. So for someone who's looking to get on the show, what do you think are the keys for them to kind of get a good chance to get on or maybe be seen?
You've got to be real. I mean, it's called reality TV, and there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, but producers and viewers at home want real, authentic, genuine emotion. So don't have presumed answers scripted. Just sort of speak from personal experiences and try and be as organic as you can inside of those interviews and do it really genuinely. If you've had your heart broken, say you've had your heart broken. If you're a little nervous about whether or not the show is real, say that. And there are no wrong answers so long as they are honest and from a place of sort of, again, being really genuine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems to be you can't fake yourself, right? So it's if you own who you are and you're your own self, I mean, it's just easy for you that way, and it's up to you can't control basically what someone else thinks, right? So
correct.
Definitely. So once you got casted, you got the announcement, what was the next step? So once you found out you're going to be on the show, what happened then?
So I decided that, Rachel was a type of woman that I was really interested in. I'm 30, so I've got a little more of a relationship aspect on my mind right now and not casual dating anymore. And I decided, screw it, again, I'm going to go through with this process and enjoy the experience. Once you say yes, there's a bunch of legal stuff that I can't really get into. And you start getting your itinerary for, that first week, which is, kind of interviews and getting ready for that night 1. But you don't get a lot of prep. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, all right, you've been chosen, cool, you want to do it. We're bringing you to LA on this date. The first rose ceremony is on this date, and good luck. So they expect you to be ready to engage in this experience right away. There's no you can't tread water, especially that first night when there's so many guys. You've got to be okay, sort of being aggressive but normal-ish in that environment. But there's not a lot of prep work they give you whatsoever.
Yeah, that first night, how is it awkward? I mean, what is it like? Because there's a lot of unknown, and the show pretty much films overnight. I believe most of you guys don't go to sleep till the morning, right? Or a.m. It's all over.
Insanely long. Started at sundown, ended at sunup.
Wow. So what is that like? I mean, just initially just getting there, kind of being unaware maybe, and meeting all these new guys. Was that kind of intimidating, awkward, or exciting? How did you take that process, that first night?
If I can be quite candid with you, I think all of us kind of share the same sentiment. No one remembers talking to Rachel. That the walk up between the limo and getting to Rachel is probably 90 feet. I blacked out step number 2. I think I said something that was somewhat intelligible. I have no clue. And then you walk into the house and you're like, holy shit, there are really good looking dudes here. The competition starts the moment you walk out of that limo and walk into the house. And it's a fun environment because everyone's so excited to be a part of it. And there are obviously, plenty of cocktails that are going around to try and ease some of the nerves. And you become friendly with the guys before the competition sets in. And I think people see that progress through the season where it's very friendly early on because, as much as you want to spend time with Rachel and that's why you're there, you also don't spend nearly as much time with her as you do with everyone else in the house. So there's 2 elements to being comfortable in the show. It's being able to have a relationship with Rachel, but the other 90% of the time, being able to be a friend of guys in the house. And we end up being like brothers, right? Where initially it's like, okay, we kind of know each other, and you get to know each other very quickly because of the types of things we talk about, and you kind of get in those brother fights. And I think you see that a lot where everyone's really nice initially, and then just as is the nature of people, we all get on each other's nerves, and it gets more competitive as fewer guys come, and time gets more and more precious, and that competition level bubbles up very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that opening night, too, I mean, when, everyone comes out with a witty, potentially, or crazy intro, was this completely left up to you to decide what you're going to come out of the limo and say, or was there kind of a nudge from a producer, like, hey, you should do this, or how was your, experience with that?
You are creative. If you're creative, you can do whatever you want. So, Blake came in with the band, that was his idea. I think someone else came in with Brady broke the ice. That was his idea. It's a little bit of carte blanche what you can do. And they'll say, maybe someone's done that, or that might be a good idea, or maybe think about it differently. But it's up to you to figure out what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Do you interact during the whole filming of the show when you're there? Do you interact a lot with the producers? Is there a constant kind of testimonial, or just on the side conversation? How does that kind of go when it comes to the producers?
The producers are there. I think that they do their best to keep the conversation on track. But the things that happen and the things we communicate, the things that we feel, what we describe in interviews, that's all very honest and real. I can't stress it enough that none of the producers ever say, hey, you should say this, right? Mm-hmm. They just ask questions about things that are happening in the house organically, and really none of it's forced, it's interesting on the inside of this thing, because when you're on the outside, you're like, God, that couldn't have happened, or that can't be real, or that has to be staged, right? It's too ludicrous. But it's not. The things that we see and we feel are all very, very real, and they're not producer-driven.
Interesting. So, every year, every season, there's a character, a villain. It's molded almost in that way to their personality. What was your take on Waboom Lucas? I mean, how was he like with your interactions with him, versus what they've kind of portrayed on TV?
I'm not the biggest Boom fan. I got old real quick, and by real quick, I mean the second Boom. He was a caricature of himself, and we talk about that all the time in the house. It was like when the cameras came on and cameras are on you all the time, but when he's around Rachel, it's like he's this cartoon thing, and I think that he specifically had his own agenda for why he was there, and that's part of the experience, right? That's part of the show, is that some guys get on and they've got this really big personality, and that's a really interesting characteristic to have, but to me, it is like, that's a role that he plays, and I never got to know the actual Waboom because I only know him as this character of himself.
And was this whole thing between him and Blake real? Like, did you feel the animosity between them?
Oh yeah, they didn't like each other.
They really didn't. I mean, and it's weird because they're apparently from like the same neighborhood or town, and he lives with his ex. It was just such a weird scenario too.
Again, you kind of can't. Producers can't make this stuff up. That was all real. Blake and Lucas, even when we were just kind of hanging out in the house, were not, within 20 feet of each other. They were not talking. They were not friends.
There's a few Chicago guys besides you on the show,
Yeah.
There's Diggy, and did you guys bond immediately? Was there that Chicago bond type of thing when you guys found out where you're from and all that? Was there something closer, I'd say, since you guys were, local and whatnot?
I love Dig. And Anthony both. The funny thing is that Diggy actually lives 90 feet away from me. We had no idea.
Wow.
But Diggy lives, we're literally separated by an alley in the West Loop. And, being from the same city, so I'm from LA originally, but I've been in Chicago for like 7 years. Being from the same place, it is immediately bonding. But the competitive nature is also like, okay, I want to be like the longest Chicago guy standing, right?
Yeah.
So it's as bonding as it is competitive.
Interesting. And also, like, you guys have so much downtime. I don't believe you have any TVs or anything like that in the house. What do you guys do for all those downtimes? Because there's a lot of time that, that you have nothing, like, technically to do. What sort of things were you trying to figure out or activities that you partook in?
You try not to think too much because you go over a billion scenarios that you can't control and it'll drive you crazy. If I'm being honest, a lot of our downtime was spent drinking Hennessy and playing spades. That was like the thing that we did to kill time. Like, there was always a pack of cards, there was always something to drink, and, guys kind of rotating. It was sort of like jail, where it was like, we're not allowed to leave the premises, we have no access to the outside world, but you got a deck of cards and a bunch of alcohol and other dudes to hang out with, and we made the most of it. It's all, again, like, it's such a ridiculously bonding experience because all you do is hang out with your guys and talk about what you're feeling and talk about what you're thinking and where you're from, and you get into some very serious conversations very quickly. Some of it is alcohol induced, but a big portion of it is that I don't think I've ever spent this much time with any one friend in a continuous span. I was there for several weeks, and all you do is wake up, go to sleep, eat, hang out with the same guys, and you get to know each other really quickly.
Do you guys even get like a phone call home or to like family or whatnot? How's that go? Or you just guys isolate it completely?
Isolation completely.
Wow, that's kind of crazy that you don't even get to speak to family members. That's really a bonding thing. So like you mentioned, you guys spend so much time together. I'm sure you must have developed some lifelong friends out of this experience. Who are some of the closest guys you've bonded with and still stay in touch, and who are some maybe that you butted heads with that probably don't talk or never would?
Dean and I love Dean. Deanie Babies. It's his Instagram handle. Shout out to Deanie Babies. He's my guy. I love Dean. He'll be a best friend for a very long time. Same thing with Peter. Peter and I became very, very close through some shared similar experiences, and they're amazing people. And actually, Dean's going to be here on Friday night. We're going out and hitting the town, so go check us out.
Nice.
So Dean for sure, Peter for sure, Diggy absolutely. We hang out. Diggy and I work out together now. Like, we're buddies. Guys that I probably butted heads with would be Josiah for sure, Eric for sure. Respect the hell out of those guys. We're cool now. We were cool on the show, but there were points of contention, no doubt. And I mean, I really doubt I would ever hang out with like Lucas, for example.
Right.
I have no interest.
No, I don't think most do. What was DeMario like? Obviously, on the second episode, we found out about the whole cheating girlfriend scandal. What was he like in the house? Because he did, obviously on the show he's portrayed, he does a lot of talking, what was he like in the house to deal with you? I know him and Josiah had a thing going, wedding plans and all that, but was he kind of like he was on TV, and what did you guys react when you found out the whole thing with the girlfriend thing?
I will say this about Demo. He is the same guy all the time. I think I'm at like a 10 out of a 10 energy level. This guy's 13, 14 out of 10, and he's like that no matter what, no matter who's around, no matter what the scenario is. He is as genuinely loud and crazy and boisterous as comes across. But there's a humbleness and a niceness to Demo that people don't get a chance to see. And I think our reaction to the situation was initially like, hey, dude, you're a fucking idiot. Mm-hmm. Like, I think we all had things that were potentially going on, a relationship that we had to end, or, communicate some things clearly to people that we may have been casually dating. And he just ended up doing that very, very poorly and seemingly tried to sneak away, which ended up kind of biting him in the ass a little bit. But look, the guy made a bad choice, and he's having to pay for that bad choice in public.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are the odds of, like, I don't know if the producers found his girlfriend or whatnot for her to show up at that game, which is like, I mean, he is from LA, so maybe, the small world in that sense, but boy, that must have been a pot of gold to get that. Were you guys really all grouped up and ready to, like, go and protect Rachel? Like, the show showed, like, you guys all gather like a little army, following her.
Yeah, that was dope, we didn't know Demo, I didn't know Demo quite as well at the time. I know him much better now. Mm-hmm. But we were all, it was a combination of feeling defensive of Rachel and also, I think, showing support that the guys that were there for, the right reasons and had a reason to stay there. And it was definitely like a unifying moment for the guys in the house. And our goal was to just try and be a support system for Rachel, even though she really doesn't need it because she's a bit of a badass herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was your experience like with Rachel? The time you got with her, I'm sure there was more than it's on, we get to see on camera on the show. What are your conversations kind of like with her and just your basic impressions whenever you got a chance to be around her?
Rachel is a very, very powerful figure. She is, as beautiful as she is on TV, she is much more beautiful in person. She's smart, she's articulate, she's witty, she's got this energy. Like, there's no doubt that she was the right person to cast as the Bachelorette. My interactions with her were, they were good. I stuck around for a little while, and, I think you guys will keep seeing me, for at least a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. And, I think the most difficult part about communicating that environment is that you get such a small amount of time. Everything is so truncated, and there's a lot of pressure around what to communicate, how to communicate, and I think that's the most difficult part is that you maybe got 10 minutes on a group date for your one-on-one time or, 5-6 minutes before someone taps on your shoulder during a rose ceremony. So, what to talk about, how to pick up your last conversation after maybe a week of not seeing her, that stuff's really hard if you're dating now, you're sending a text or, you're sending a meme or something, you're kind of staying relevant, but you get, there are sometimes if you don't have a group date or a one-on-one that week, you see her the week before and then you see her a week later and it's like, how do we pick up this conversation?
Do you feel like around the house, do you sense like guys are front runners maybe or picking up a lot of momentum? How is that conversation or like, do you have that sort of like aura or feeling, when guys are maybe getting ahead of you or you guys view as the show goes on, who's becoming kind of a favorite? Does this happen or how did you kind of feel that?
I think the only way that you can figure out who's leading the pack is by who's getting the roses. And there hasn't been enough hasn't been enough season yet for you to see who gets more than one rose type of thing. So, you get an idea of who the front runner is as you get deeper, obviously. But it's really up for grabs initially.
Mm-hmm. Hey, did you guys think right away with Brian? He seemed to like really get our attention. And got the first impression rose the first night. How was he like? And did you guys kind of view him? And he's a little bit older, I think, than most guys in the house. I think he might be the oldest one.
Brian's 37.
Yeah, so he's there. Obviously the older statesman, but also seemed to be someone that really got a good connection with her from the beginning. How was your interaction with him, and just how was he in general?
Yeah, me and Brian are cool. We still chat. A lot of us still chat outside of the show and, exchange text messages and calls every now and then. We were very friendly. I'd grab a drink with Brian. I think from my interaction with him, he was a cool guy. And he had a strong connection with Rachel, obviously. And he was sort of one of those guys that he led quietly from the front. Not super boisterous, not crazy loud in the house, but chill dude, good guy, seemingly. And, again, someone that I'd grab a drink with and that I interact with still. And, there wasn't anything overtly competitive or crazy about Brian.
I don't know, it's early on, obviously, in the season, but, Lee's apparently the villain. I don't know, how was he? Was this kind of unexpected for you to see him, come out to be this guy from night one, maybe, to, you wouldn't think a guy, I don't know, for some reason you don't think a guy from, the South, he didn't have that villainous type of feel to him, or a guy that would create controversy. Did that catch you by surprise, or how was he around you guys?
I think it did initially. I think Lee did a very good job initially of being, kind of hiding behind the accent and the guitar and, kind of attempting to be everyone's friend. But Lee was someone on the show that I found to try and undermine other people. And he is not someone I would hang out with outside of the show either. I think his biggest tactic was trying to find a couple guys and throwing them under the bus, and some of it true, some of it not, like some of it maybe allegations, but I don't think anyone in the house appreciated how Lee went about his business.
One guy I really knew off the bat, the first guy that really stood out to me is Kenny, because I remember I'm a fan of wrestling.
Kenny the pretty boy Pitbull.
Right. I'm like, oh my God, is that actually him? I was so surprised to see him on the show. That just seemed like a remove. I didn't think he see him as a wrestler and a guy that's, on TV and, a high-strung kind of personality. And then you see him on this show. There was such a drastic change for him. How was Kenny like? Because he seemed like a fun, real guy, and you got to see a real kind of sensitive side about him, and learn about his daughter and stuff. Seemed like a great guy, overall, with a lot of stuff going on in his life.
I love Kenny King. I will preface the conversation with that. We are buddies. He's one of those guys in the group that I talk to all the time, and it's funny. He was kind of he kind of initiated the anthem of our season was. It's that song, like Molly Percocet song, Mask Off. So Mask Off was like the theme in the house, and was like the one song that like everybody kind of like hummed and sang to, because we don't even have music really to listen to. And every time I'm out, grabbing a drink or wherever I am, and that song comes on my side or comes on his side, we FaceTime each other. So like Kenny's awesome, and Kenny is one of those guys that is very multifaceted. He is that big brute, right? He's that like wrestler guy, but he's also got a crazy soft spot with his daughter, and just seems to be like a really, really fucking good dad. Great guy. Could not speak more highly of Kenny King.
Did you guys know that he was a wrestler? Like, any guys in the house recognize him from like television or whatnot? Because he probably has one of the higher profiles in the house coming in. Did anyone know his wrestling background when you guys met him initially?
I did not. I used to be in wrestling when I was younger, but, kind of lost touch with it, and it was news to me when he told me.
Yeah, it was surprising to see him on a show, but I think, you get a really cool side of him, and even fans of wrestling or, fans of The Bachelor could really appreciate the guy, that he seemed really genuine and cool.
Yeah, no, Kenny's an awesome human being. I'm lucky to know Kenny.
So now, spoiler alert, you don't make it to the end. But what was it like to you that elimination day, or just like, the realization that you're going home, not getting that rose, and what is that like, that moment, and then the next, day or the finish of that day like?
I am still a contestant in the running, so no spoiler alerts here. I can't really touch on that one.
Okay, sounds good. For Bachelor, it's almost like a family. Not it doesn't span like this show only, but everyone kind of connects from the previous seasons, and obviously at Bachelor in Paradise and all these other shows. What is that like? Have you gotten across to meeting other contestants from previous seasons and making friendships and connections with others?
Yeah, no doubt. That Batch fam that people talk about, it's absolutely real. And again, you share experiences with people that you can't really articulate and communicate to anyone else unless they've had that experience. And so the environment creates for a very bonding one. I was fortunate enough to be asked to go on Paradise. I actually just got back 2 days ago from early filming. And guys like Derek from last year, Z from 2 years ago, Vinny, Robbie, Alex from last year. I mean, we were there for a short time together, but again, the environment breeds one that is of like truth and honesty, and obviously kind of like friendly drinking and playing around, and you get to know people quickly. So, including the girls, man. I mean, the girls are fantastic too. We all share this experience, and we're all cast for a reason. And I've had the fortunate experience of meeting a bunch of guys from last season and the season before, and a handful of girls from next season too.
Obviously there's stuff going on. I'm not going to even, you don't have to comment or anything going on right now. People are aware with Bachelor in Paradise. So unfortunately the things are going on, and, a lot of stories coming out. No one knows really what happened, but I'm sure eventually everything's going to get settled. But here's my comment, I guess, from my point of view. Maybe, the show is not coming. I think it's pretty announced. It's been canceled. But looking at the future of Bachelor and Bachelorette and maybe Paradise, I think personally that there are things that could change with the show, the way it's constructed. Maybe like the focus on maybe getting back to maybe the basics, because a lot of, like we talked about, the character kind of creation maybe, and a lot of the focus, like you remember certain seasons by the villains. You remember the Chads and the Corinnes and, the Kelseys. You kind of remember these people for that, but do you maybe think that the show maybe could return to a different form where maybe like the sole real focus is the relationship, and maybe less drama, but more like actual love and the pursuit of it? Because I think maybe now it might be a little change in a direction, maybe that it could be a focus again on, what the first original seasons kind of created.
I don't think that's ever not the goal. I don't think that the intent is ever to create characters out of people, villainize or, kind of exalt others. I think the intent of the show ultimately is trying to find a pair of people that love each other and that want to form their lives together through this really unique experience. And the characters and the drama, it's a byproduct of having 30 plus people competing for a single individual inside of a house with nothing to do but talk about their feelings, The intent of the show is not to create drama, it's to find an opportunity to be with someone for a very long time, but everything you see is a byproduct of that ultimate goal.
You being on the show and being there and kind of experiencing the run, do you think in that span of time you get, being on a show, do you think it's feasible to really find love? Because you see a lot of these relationships, obviously, the stigma is that a lot of these couples break up when the show is done filming, and maybe it's like, because due to like nature that, they didn't get that much time to get to know each other, and then when you kind of get the chance off the show, it's different, Do you really feel personally that there's a real chance of finding someone and forming a bond, and, why these relationships kind of end, prematurely a lot of times?
If you were to ask someone 10 years ago if they go to find someone they would date, they'd probably be like, that's the weirdest fucking thing I've ever heard.
It's kind of a standard now in our society when, online dating's so prevalent and, people don't do the old school way of maybe courting and meeting each other. The way people date now, and, if there's a chance you can actually find something real on The Bachelor. Can continue elaborating.
Yeah, no, I think that dating today is really unique, right? Where I think if you ask someone a decade ago if, they would swipe right on an app and find someone they would date or fall in love with, that they think you were crazy. A lot of people outside of this experience think you're kind of crazy for assuming that you have the opportunity to find real love. But in this scenario, you're cut off from the entire world, right? You are completely disassociated from your phone, TV, all your social media accounts. Everything that distracts you from getting to know someone is removed in this environment. And your emotions are really heightened because you talk about them all the time, but you're also open to the idea of falling in love. Some of it is maybe, kind of a placebo effect where you're there and you're like, okay, I'm here for this specific reason, so I'm open to it. Your guard is down a little bit, and some of them don't work out, right? And when they don't work out, they're very public. But 50% of marriages don't work out. So I don't think it's crazy to find someone that you actually fall in love with here on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think today's dating is so just widespread in so many different ways. Like, I can think of it like even like 3-4 years ago when you said you're doing online dating, people would kind of look at you weird, like, oh my God, you're doing now it's like, who isn't doing online dating if you're single? Then you're weird now for not doing it, So things have just changed in society so quickly, really.
So here's the problem is that has a mass spread appeal, right? And that scales very quickly. This experience doesn't scale. Mm-hmm. That's why that family thing we talked about is very real. Because you can't simulate the things that we've gone through and the emotions that we've felt and communicate that clearly to someone outside of the experience because they're going to think you're crazy.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. I see that aspect, like, completely true in that sense, And, the show in itself, like, you look at it, and the last, like, maybe 3 years when I started doing this podcast, I remember literally I got this trademark for Bachelor Universe and like, within, like, end of that season, I started right after Juan Pablo's season, I started doing this podcast, started the first Bachelor in Paradise. But it really, everything just really, like, grew with this whole Bachelor thing. Like, online presence became so crazy and so, like, widespread. And before that, like, I think I was like one of the first podcasts, honestly, about this. And then next thing I saw, there was like 10 other ones that popped up like immediately, I don't know if you were following the show a couple of years back, but, what do you think was the starting point that got this show so, like, popular? It was mainstream, but it went to another level, like, I'd say 2-3 years ago.
I think it's the rise of use of sort of social sharing and social content, the access to, and I am by no means a celebrity, but there is a celebrity around the show, mm-hmm. and the access to behind the scenes content, or just to be able to, shoot a tweet or post an Instagram message or a direct message and actually know it gets to an individual, is a really powerful feeling for people who are on the show or who don't have access to those people. So just the increased rise in social usage and social sharing, I think, drives this type of I guess dynamic within the fandom of the Bachelor family, because people are crazy about that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that it was quite this big until I got into it. I was surprised at how quickly my followership grew, and you've got people kind of recognizing the streets, and for people who aren't on TV, it's a very surreal feeling. I didn't know how quite big it was until now.
Yeah, and it's big enough where you had one of these group dates where you had Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. Tell me about that experience. Like, were you guys aware of this at all, or you just came to the location, and what was your interaction with them? Because that was a pretty big deal. There's some major A-list stars right there, Yeah,
that was fun, man. No, the guys have no clue. Every turn we take is unexpected, and that's part of what makes it really fun. But they were amazing. I think they have every reason not to be down to earth and cool and really sociable, but they were all of those things. They're totally pros when the camera's on, and they seem to actually really be in love with each other. And admittedly, we were told that they're just a big fan of the show organically, and ABC didn't call them. They were like, "Hey, I really like Rachel as a Bachelorette. Can we help in some way?" Mm-hmm. And that kind of speaks to how big this thing is. A-listers, much like everyone else around the country, has a bottle of wine, has some girlfriends and some guy friends, and they sit down and watch the show. Like, that's how big it is.
Yeah, and I can personally attest to Ashton Kutcher being just a straight up, down to earth guy. I met him a few years back in LA. And he's a big Bears fan too. He's from Iowa originally, but he's a huge Bears fan. So, this guy is just like always wearing Bears hats, always supporting the Bears. So, I had a brief little interaction with him about the Bears, out in LA. So, he's definitely that kind of guy, and it's cool that, you can verify it also that, for someone of that status, that has every opportunity to not care or just, be bigger than they are, but he's just really down to earth. So that's really fun. How were the group dates versus like is there awkwardness on them? Like, how do you guys feel going, on a group day as opposed to a solo one, where, obviously you get more time with Rachel, but how's the vibe, between you guys on a group date?
It's competitive for sure. I think that everyone's trying to communicate who they are and get some time with Rachel for the most part. And I kept hearing this kind of over and over again, that our group of guys are most of us really respectful with time. And if Rachel was talking to her, if Rachel was talking to one of us, then, we'd interject, we'd do it tactfully, and it wasn't like this barrage. And, so while there was competition, I felt like it was gentlemanly. And I mean, they're a little awkward. You don't generally go on a date with 6, 7, or 8 other guys. So that dynamic is interesting. You always have to manage two dynamics and 2 relationships. One is with the guys in the house, because you see them 20 hours a day, 5 days a week, 7 days a week. You see Rachel only a couple hours a week. So the dynamic in the house you've got to be respectful of, while also doing what you can to get your time with Rachel and being aggressive and being sort of assertive. So there's a tactful way to do that, and I think that for the most part that took place.
I was kind of always wondering, do you guys, like, the actual sleeping and living situation, are you guys, like, in almost, like, a dorm type of setting where multiple people in a room, bunk beds? How does that all go about, like, actual, like, sleeping situation?
It's a lot of big dudes, too. It's a lot of big dudes in little beds. The mansion's big, but it wasn't designed to hold 24, 25 guys. So we're shacked up together. It's basically like a college dorm room all over again.
Yeah. Did you guys get to pick, like, who's kind of near each other or in a room or whatnot, like, in that way too?
It's day one. You kind of got your luggage and you got your name tag. It's very much like summer camp. Like, all your stuff is like by a bed and that's where you are. But as people go, you can move around, and I snore a little bit. So my roommate kind of hated me. So I ended up sleeping like on the big green couch you see on, like, the one you see generally on TV when we're at the rose ceremony. Yeah. I slept on that one every night.
Oh, man. Well, at least it was available, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And as far as just, like, what about, like, the clothing and stuff like that? Do you guys all bring your own clothes, or the show provides any such thing, like any accessories besides probably food? Or is it all what you guys bring and you decide what you kind of wear on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's all your own style. Bring what you would wear if you were going on a date or if you were hanging around the house, and you kind of end up packing up the majority of your life with the assumption you're going to be there for a while. But it's all your stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a good thing. You get to at least choose what makes you comfortable.
Right.
So you briefly did mention that you had a brief stay on Paradise. Looking back for whatever time you were there, how different was that, vibe versus the vibe in the house? Like, is there a whole complete different, the change of scenery is obvious there because you're on a beach type setting, but was it very different, startling to, like, go, or was it kind of the same vibe and feel almost, from one place to the other?
The vibe is definitely different. They're obviously, it's so much looser. You have guys that you've known for weeks and weeks already, right? You have friends that you see when you show up and not strangers. You also have the male-female dynamic where you're not just, you're not so isolated where you only see Rachel once every, 3 or 4 days or how many days it is. You actually get to interact with people every single day. So there isn't that time pressure, just because you have more of an opportunity to organically communicate and hang out with people. So
it's more comfortable in that sense. Plus the setting, I guess you're kind of not trapped in a house, right? I mean, there's probably more loose kind of...
It's one of the most gorgeous places I've ever been to. Honestly, it's incredible.
Okay. And I don't know if you can comment this at all. How were you guys notified that you had to leave, in a sense? Was that told to you? Like, were you guys even aware, or just kind of came out of the blue, out of nowhere, like, hey, you guys need to pack up and leaving? Were you guys surprised, in a sense, what was even going on? Or how was it just notified to you, all that, production stopping?
Yeah, I can't communicate that.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, so yeah, now, I'm kind of curious. We talked about social media and the aspect of the celebrity on the show. How has your life almost changed? Have you noticed anything? Obviously, do more people recognize you here on the streets now, or has your life changed since doing the show? Have you noticed any changes yet?
I mean, I wouldn't be doing a podcast like this, that's for sure.
Right.
And yeah, you have that. It's interesting. The lifestyle I can see someone getting really comfortable with and getting used to and really enjoy. I mean, I love my experience, and I would be lying if I said that it isn't a really cool feeling to have someone stop you in the street and say, "Oh my God, I saw on TV, can I take a photo?" Like that's a really flattering, cool thing. I'd be lying by saying that it I didn't mean something or I didn't think it was really fun and cool. You're certainly more public. I think that is both good and bad. Everything you do is scrutinized. There are some mean people on the internet.
Yeah.
I've never had a group of people or, a handful of people say kind of disparaging things for no reason in my comments. And you kind of have to get used to that, right? So as much as it is cool for the people that recognize you and have a fun time with it, it's equally difficult sometimes to have, people that you don't know kind of telling you these mean and nasty things for reasons that they don't understand. And that's a really interesting dynamic. It toughens you up a little bit. But I think that the biggest benefit to going through this process is, in credit to guys like Boom and Blake and, anyone who goes through this experience, whether or not you're a fan favorite or you're a best friend of the guy in the house, you've got to have the mettle to go through with it. You've got to be okay with the judgment that you're going to get. And I think it lets you be a little more comfortable in your own skin. You're like, fuck it. I was on TV. I made an ass of myself. This is who I really am. And judge all you want, but it's all out there. So it's somewhat liberating, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, because you gotta understand, like, these are people just reacting to the footage they see. They don't know you by any means, so it's like it's like a quick judgment type of situation. They say things that they don't understand in a way. So almost taking it personally, I'm sure it would. You don't want to ever hear bad things about you, but you can really almost take it seriously in a way, because they don't know anything close to the truth, probably, in a lot of these scenarios or what happens. You just see what's edited, on screen.
Yeah, and I think that's a difficult part. I got a lot of Twitter mentions and Instagram kind of comments when Eric and I had that discussion previous episode, and what you don't see is that we were having the discussion for days. And, we'd been asked sort of similar questions and articulated our feelings about a particular subject for a while. And it wasn't just something where, I decided to sit down and interject. I was there for a while previous to that, got a glass of water, So the way that they cut that up, everything happened and everything is true. But the way that they communicate that visually sometimes is a little bit, can be misconstrued by the audience. And what's funny is that Eric and I, a lot of us are in a group chat, and we kind of go nuts when we watch the show because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to get cut. We know what happened. We know kind of our truth in the moment, but we don't know what's going to get communicated and how people will interpret it. So we all kind of just get a good chuckle when we watch it together. But Eric and I are great. We're cool. I respect the hell out of that guy. It just kind of, you're in a house and you've had some cocktails and you're competing for a woman of all things, and the conversations get heated and you get pissed off at your brother, right? When you get pissed off at your brother, you fight.
Yeah, so you do watch the show. How is that every week when Monday comes around? Do you go to a special place to watch it, some bar at home? Do you interact with the guys? How is that Monday for you when it airs, the show airs?
Yeah, so the first couple we had a viewing party, and it was with myself, Diggy, and Anthony, who all Chicago guys, all good buddies. I don't know if we'll be doing one this coming Monday. I think this one's just going to be kind of hanging out at the house and watching it, alone but together because we're all constantly chatting. My group chat just drains the battery on my phone.
And yeah, so far what you've noticed a few episodes, how are the edits? How, you'd say, honest they are with what you remember happening? What do you guys think about through these group chats? What you see, on TV versus what you've done? Is there a lot of edits or a lot of kind of unexpected things, or is it pretty basic and pretty what you expected? Yeah, again,
I think that the truth exists. there are some things that happen in the house that they don't show, and that maybe emphasize some other moments. Their job is to create a show out of truth. Their job is to create something that's compelling to watch, and you don't see me, Dean, Kenny, and Diggy playing cards for 6 hours, really, really good friends, and kind of drinking together and bonding over that stuff. You don't see that because it's not particularly interesting. So there's a lot of stuff that you don't see. Consider that one episode, one 60-minute or 120-minute episode, is 5-6 days, 20 hours a day of filming.
Wow.
So you get a very, very small snippet of what actually took place. It's not that any of it isn't true. It's all true. It's just a very small sample size of what actually happened throughout the duration of that week.
And, in a sense now, looking back at your experience, what have you take away, one or two things you really take away the most out of this whole experience that you kind of cherish with you, or something maybe that you've learned or gained through this experience? Yeah,
I can be completely honest and say I loved being on the show. I loved having the experience. I really enjoyed meeting, the producers and the people who create the show. And I would be lying if I said that I didn't have lifelong friends. I think I told you earlier, Dean and I FaceTime almost every day. I talk to Peter all the time. Diggy and I live next to each other. I have a whole new group of friends that I will appreciate for a very, very long time. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, too, is how I communicate myself to others. You're forced to be really honest with yourself and other people in the house, because all you're doing is talking and hanging out, and they get to see a very real side of you very quickly. And, the first week or so, you're just not used to being on camera. It's a very strange environment, and I don't think anyone is necessarily themselves the first little while. You're trying to make sure you say the right things, and you answer the questions the right way, and you interact with people the right way. But once you kind of let that stuff go, and once you just have a good time and be yourself and forget that you're on a show, you start to be really honest with yourself and others, and you really enjoy the experience. So, for me, the biggest takeaway was just approaching people with a new level of honesty and sincerity, and really just being okay with who I am, even after all this stuff on TV.
Mm-hmm. Has dating been different for you from the short time you've noticed, or people that got aware, were aware that you were on the show? Do you get approached more when you go to a bar now, or even on the streets, or suddenly random people from your past coming around? Has your dating life improved maybe because of being on the show, or how has that been the effect of it?
In the immediate term, it's actually gotten harder. I think women are intimidated, much like men can be intimidated, right? By status or celebrity or whatever that may be. I think that there are two groups of women that interact with, and I can probably generalize for most of us right now. Those who are really interested in spending a short amount of time with us, we'll call it, abbreviated amounts of time, because they think it's really fun and cool. And then there are those that are looking for a serious relationship, take a look at people who have been on the show and have this perception of us that because we were on it, now that we're off it, and however long we stay, and no one knows the truth of that. But let's say that they consider us to be available men, they're going to assume that we're being communicated to by hundreds of women, and they don't want to deal with that stuff. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword.
Experience for most of the guys that you're talking to and friends with from the show, basically, that there are these two different types, that you guys deal with, and how do you actually separate it? Is it easy for you to kind of notice this and know what they might be going after, or maybe just so because you're on a show, that's why they're interested in you, not actually for you. Do you pick up on that pretty easily and see what these certain women might be about from the get go?
No doubt. It's a pretty easy tell when all they're doing is asking you about the show.
Yep. That's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy tell.
Yeah. Well, that makes it easier for you then to know what you're getting yourself into then from the start. I was going to ask you about, do you fall, obviously there's so much being written always about the show, you have Reality Steve and all sorts of spoilers and all these things. Do you listen to these things? Do you read these articles? Like, how close do you stay in tune with what's being said about the show in general and follow, like, the rumors, spoilers, and just news in general?
It gets, you're less invested over time. I think the first time that you read a spoiler about yourself, you're like, holy crap, like, I want to read every single comment, and, like, see every single thing. But you get disinterested as time goes on, unless there's something really big that takes place. But I have not been diving into the reality Steves of the world here too deeply over the last week or so. Not to say that it doesn't pop up. Other guys look at it a little more closely, and we are really connected very tightly through this group chat that we have, and things get kind of thrown around all the time. So I'm aware of most of it. I don't actively go seek that.
Right, and you never know where the information's coming from for these sources too, and how accurate only you guys who have been through this experience really kind of know the truths, too. So whatever's always being given away or spoiled, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt in a way, because it's usually the only truth is your truth, right?
Exactly. And unfortunately, no one knows that but the people in the house, which really speaks further to that bonding experience and that family element.
Exactly. So what's next for you now? Like, now that you're back here and shows airing, but obviously not filming anything. So, what's kind of your next step after this experience, and what would you like to do career-wise and just like personally, and maybe now that you were on the show, what's your next move in life in the sense if you have one, or you just want to do things the same way that you had prior to filming?
Yeah. I've owned my own business now for a little over a year. I plan on, kind of continuing that and pursuing expanding my business and working as a consultant for startup businesses here all over the city and hopefully over the country pretty soon. But I was on the set of Bachelor in Paradise, and I really enjoyed that experience while it was available. And I would not hesitate to do something else because I really love meeting the people. I've made amazing friends, and it is just a really fun time. So while I continue to pursue what I was doing prior to the show, if opportunities come up to be involved in something else that they're doing, then I'd be all for it.
Okay, so you are open, and your relationship is good with this show in a sense where there's possibilities if ever arise that you would do it, and you would think they would probably consider you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and obviously there was talk that there's going to be a kind of a Winter Games type of show that they were planning for the Winter Games in the early winter. So that's another kind of a Bachelor spin-off opportunity right there.
I know those are. I think has that been actually communicated? Are they rumors, or has ABC put out a statement? I have no idea.
I believe, from what I heard, it was a go. I don't know if they officially announced in a press release, but all things were set to go. So that was the plan, that they were going to air it simultaneously with the coverage kind of the Olympics on a weekly night. I think they even picked a night. It was supposed to be on a Tuesday night, I believe. So it coincided because I think it would be running with The Bachelor, actually, side by side. So it'd be like a 2-night thing. So from what I've heard last, that was still a go. So hopefully it stays,
Yeah. You know what? I was a big fan of The Challenge back in the day.
Oh, yeah. The MTV. Yep. The road rules and all. It's still going on, by the way.
Yeah. It's not quite as popular, I think, as it has been in the past, but I loved that stuff. So I played football in college. I played rugby professionally after college, and I'm a huge. I wouldn't say I'm a meathead. I'm like a nerdy meathead, if that even exists.
Like Alex, right, from your season.
Oh God, I love that guy. He's actually in Chicago this weekend. We're hanging out.
Oh, nice.
I love that guy. Yeah. So there's this nerdy side and this work side to me that is sort of pervasive, but there's that really competitive athletic side. I'd be more than happy to compete with my fellow Bachelorette folks in any sort of competition-based game. It'd be awesome.
And you know what? It just makes common sense in a way, because there's a lot of the guys and gals on the show, they're usually pretty athletic. They come from athletic backgrounds a lot. Everyone's in shape, much more so than you would think some of the real world cast members. I think you could definitely do a way better version of The Bachelor, a competition type of event, because everyone's in fairly good shape and, athletic, and, they have lot of sports backgrounds, and athletic backgrounds. So I think it's like a natural fit.
I agree. If you look at our season, guys like Anthony played Division I football at Northwestern. Diggy played Division I basketball at University of Illinois Chicago. I played football in college. I played rugby professionally. We have Bachelor in Paradise. I was talking to Derek. Derek ran track from last season. Derek ran track for a really good school. There's a lot of competitive athletic background in the Bachelor family. You take a look back, even Murray, right? He played quarterback at D1 college. I mean,
right.
and then you take a look at Rogers. Like, there's so many of these guys that have that athletic background and we're big guys, by the way. I mean, I'm 5'11", and I look tiny on the season. Like, everyone was like 6'2", 6'3". Like, these are big dudes.
Yeah, it seemed like it. It really seemed like this was a really tall cast. There wasn't, occasionally you have some smaller guys, but this seemed like to be like a really fit, and these guys were really like you mentioned, there's a lot of business ties, but there's also it seems like athletic, like former athlete types too.
Yeah, I was really thankful. I think the only reason I was thankful that Lee was there was he was shorter than me.
Right. Was he the smallest guy in the house? And it seems like.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, you saw the mud wrestling date. Like, he's pretty cut up, and he's got a good build, but he was just an inch shorter, so I'll take it.
I just couldn't believe Kenny didn't win the mud wrestling. How does that happen? That he doesn't win that competition with ease?
He gets shit for it even today, so.
Does he? Okay. I'm like, I don't know if it was like a wrestling thing where he put a guy over or something, scripted, in a way that unexpectedly he'd lose. But man, I was just like, how does this guy not win this, like, with his eyes closed?
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between having a good time and being ultra competitive. I know Kenny very well. Kenny's a good friend of mine. He is a very, we would kind of play around. We kind of horse around, right? We're guys, even though we're like 30, we're like
sure.
12-year-old kids. We kind of horse around, and the dude is a bull. If he really, really was pissed and wanted to, kind of throw you around in real life or in the mud, he could have done that. I think I have full confidence that he was playing and, held back a little bit, because he's a strong dude.
Would you think he's one of the most strongest guys, or the most intimidating in a sense of you wouldn't want to get in a fight with in the house of anyone?
What's funny is that I consistently hear that it was myself and Kenny were the two guys that apparently the people, at least at the onset, didn't want to mess with.
Aha, well, that must feel pretty good then.
Yeah. If I'm in a league with Kenny, then I'm doing something right.
Definitely. Well, it seems like you're going to have a really fun weekend this weekend. A lot of guys are coming in. So Alex, Dean, right? I mean, you have Diggy around here and Anthony. This is going to be a big get-together then.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good time this weekend. So Alex is from Michigan, which isn't too far of a drive to Chicago. We've got Dean, who is just kind of traveling around and enjoying himself now, and Diggy, who lives next door, Anthony, who lives in Evanston, which is about 20 minutes north of here. Mm-hmm. It'll be really fun to get those guys together. We might have a surprise visit from a former contestant as well, so it'll be a good time.
Wow, so it's a whole weekend thing, right? An entire weekend?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of guys are coming in Friday, and, we'll go out Friday and Saturday and try and be human beings on Sunday, because we are, somewhat adults and have work and stuff that we've got to do again, and I think the majority of the fun will happen Friday, Saturday.
Is it on to you to kind of guide him around and show him around? Are you the tour guide in a sense here, or does that go to Diggy or Anthony?
No, I'm playing tour guide for sure. I'm basically like setting up all of our dates, and so to speak. So it's fun though, man. I'm happy to do it.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really glad that you were able to join and talk about your experience on the show. It seems like you had a really great time and made some great friends, which is ultimately all you can really ask for, to go on and get this experience and make some lifelong friends, which it seems like you definitely have done.
Yeah, no, I'm thankful. I'm happy. There are going to be people who like you, who dislike you, who get it, who don't get it. But I come away with a really, truly like a once in a lifetime. People say that, but it's a once in a lifetime experience, unless you're Nick, I think.
Well, that's like a 4 or 5 or a lifetime contract experience.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's truly a once in a lifetime experience, and I come away with amazing friends and stories that I will remember forever and ever. And I'm thankful for it. So I'm actually thankful for the producers and the show. I had an awesome time, and I'm glad I could do it.
That's great. So how can people reach out to you on Twitter and Instagram? Like, share all your contact information anywhere where anyone can follow you, or just even, try to see if they're interested in your consulting work, how they can get a hold of you there too. So
yeah, sure. So it's at Iggy, IGGY _Rodriguez, RODRIGUEZ. That's the same thing for Snapchat, for Twitter, for my Instagram. Diggy and I had a really good time doing an Instagram live video the other day where we just kind of answered questions and had people jump in, and we're doing some commentary since there wasn't an episode. So you can plan on seeing a few more of those. And if there's a small to medium-sized business owner out there who's interested,
right.
The consulting practice is called VOR. It's VOR, and it's vorconsulting.co.
Awesome. So yeah, that's where everyone can get a hold of you, and also you're on the show right now, so there's plenty going to be probably chatter coming up this Monday all over social media. So I'm sure you're ready for that too.
Yeah, man, it'll be a good time.
Well, definitely appreciate it. Like I said, your presence is welcome. I do these recaps of the shows usually every Monday night or Tuesday. If you ever want to join on, any of the guys want to come along, say something or whatnot, doors always open for you guys to come on, and for you especially, because it's definitely awesome to talk to you and really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, man. I'll see if I can't throw Diggy on next week or something.
Oh, that'll be perfect. Yeah, stay in touch with me. Let me know if anything come up, and get both of you guys in here. So a lot more fun, and just comment on the show then. A lot more lighthearted too, and your reactions of what's being shown.
No, for sure.
Thank you so much, Iggy. Appreciate it. I'm glad we had a mutual friend in common that made this happen. Small world here.
No, I know it gets smaller and smaller, but no, I had fun, dude. Jim, thank you very much, man. It was a really good time, and I look forward to taking a look at the podcast when you guys are all done.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll be promoting it all Monday for sure. So you'll be seeing it a lot popping up on Twitter feeds and stuff. For some surprising reason, sometimes they put me in like the celebrity tweets. I don't even know why, but it's like I'll take that, because I guess I've been doing this for a while.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, bud.
Thank you. Have a great one. Enjoy your weekend. Don't get too crazy with the guys.
Yeah, we'll be as responsible as we can.
All right. Take care, Iggy. Thanks to Iggy for joining me here on the podcast, on the Bachelor Universe podcast. I'm Jim Alexander. You can check me out on Twitter. Any questions, comments, concerns, at JimRKO. So that's at JIMRKO. And make sure to check out this website, thebacheloruniverse.com. And check out for the podcast version. It's always available on iTunes and Stitcher and all sorts of podcast providers under Southgate Media. So you look up Southgate Media, Bachelor Universe, that's how you get it. I'll be back at it again, and hopefully Iggy will join for more podcasts and a special guest host along with him. So a lot more fun things coming your way. For now, I'm out.